If anybody ever tells you they don't need help with anatomy, they're lying to you. We'll have to get some reference. We'll grab some reference if we get stuck. And we're stuck. Trust me, I am not a professional. Ha! Joke's on you. You already clicked. Now you gotta stay here. Alright, welcome back to the studio today. Thank you for joining me again. I want to talk about a subject that is somewhat contentious, but I don't think it needs to be complicated. And we're gonna try to break it down as simply as possible in laying a foundation in anatomy. You'll have to forgive me, we keep having power outages here at the house, so I've lost a lot of footage of what I was screen capping for the videos. Alright, there's a lot of ways to skin this anatomy cat out there, and I won't say that any one way is particularly better than the other. I think it's a developmental process as an artist to learn how you like to portray and get down your anatomy as you're learning and growing as an artist. It's a very much an individual process, but you can lay the foundation with some very basic techniques or some very basic thought processes when you're going into how to draw anatomy from the ground up. So we're going to explore that a little bit today. I'm going to get into the canvas here in a second and lay out some guidelines just on a foundational level of how to start thinking about anatomy, maybe in a little bit more of a free-flowing, free-form type of style than something that's really structured or something that's really strict and applied in some of the kind of classical ways. So a little bit of classical mixed with a little bit of freestyle, and you might be able to find out a way to unlock your anatomy skills all the better. Hope we can do that in this video. Alright, step one, and this is just the way I approach things. Step one is gesture. Very simply, it is capturing the movement in the form. So the movement underlying or behind the form. The line of action. Where is my character in space and what are they doing? Where are the general rough proportions of their body, the direction, the orientation, and the movement? The easiest way to capture gesture is with the spine. And this is just my method. This is the way I start. And then you can build from there. So it's a building block. There's gesture lines in the face, your center line, your eye lines. There's gesture line in the spine, the arms and the legs, pelvis, torso, that kind of thing. Capturing that portion, the torso, is probably the most critical when it comes to establishing the gesture. If you can capture the proper dimensions and directions and organic flow and movement of the torso, then the rest of it is just building blocks. We're going to break down this lesson focusing more on the trunk, the main portion of the body, than anything else. Some things to keep in mind when you're talking about gesture: contrapposto, weight, movement, direction, opposing forces, gravity, depending on muscle movement. How are you interacting with the environment, the world? Or how is the character interacting with the environment in the world? Alright, the second phase of this is form. Big shapes. That's what form is. Basically, it's just the big shapes. Identifying mass, muscle, tissue, costumes. So let's go ahead and we'll take this guy here. This is our stick dummy, and I enjoyed the way that was looking. So I'm going to go ahead and work off of that one. So let's just start walking in some main forms. Muscle groups. Got to have a neck. It's important. Doesn't need to be overly thick, but it needs to be there. Kind of got our head established. Let's do a straight on pose. It's more simple this way. Rib cage is here. Arms roughly here. Joint there. Joint there. Got a little contrapposto. We're just going to start building this out. Basically laying tissue, bone, muscle, and mass onto character. And this is where, flipping the canvas, yep, we got some problems. Too long. Now what is our character doing? We need to decide pretty soon here. And we need to decide male or female. Let's go female. the end of the pelvis. Widen those hips out just a little bit, so it's a little more telling as to the gender of the character. Alright, now legs being my least favorite thing in the world to do. I generally run away from that, but gotta get it done, so let's get it done. Let's say that this leg is coming forward and this one is a little backward, a little behind. Alright, that about does it for form. We've got the rough forms blocked in, and we're looking pretty good. The next phase, we're going to start really dialing in proportions and perspective. Okay, you'll have to forgive me. Like I stated earlier, I lost a lot of footage. We had several power outages through the course of doing this portion of the video. And so in this portion of the video, I moved into perspective and proportion. And proportion is simply the size relationships of body parts, one to the other, in a way that is natural looking, in a way that is appealing looking, in a way that is attractive, and kind of fits, you know. And you can exaggerate proportions, giving characters different looks depending on stylization or realism or whatever effect you're going for, whether it's anime style, comic book style, or any of the various styles out there. Proportions play a lot in telling that part of the story. Now, the second part of proportion is actually perspective. It is laying out the position of a body in three-dimensional space. Now, I brought in a lot of images from other digital art sketch canvases that I had been working on. I kind of compiled them all here to try to show perspective in the different figures and forms, and capture a little bit more interesting of a pose for the character going forward. The first pose we were working on was kind of static and just kind of standing there, so I adopted this new one that I'll bring up in a second, and then I've started tweaking it from there after establishing a little bit more of my form and perspective and proportions, and you know, kind of coming up with a better idea, honestly, to what this character could be. So after compiling these sketches and working on some gesture forms, I went ahead and took the one that I liked the best, pulled it aside, and put it in a new canvas to start working on fleshing out this character fully in proportion and perspective, while also thinking about exaggeration, exaggerating forms, or exaggerating movement, or exaggerating dimensions and proportions to show foreshortening and to show distance, relationships from basically yourself as a viewer, the camera lens of your eye, to the subject. So I've taken this image here, right here, that I liked out of the sketch pad, I guess you could say, of forms that I drew down, and I moved it over here, and I've worked my way through tweaking some of the proportions to kind of make it look a little better. So the original looked like this, but I went through and I started tweaking some of the proportions and the perspective just a little bit, refining and fine-tuning shapes to bring it back to about here. And at this point I went ahead and transferred it to a new canvas, and I put a background layer behind it with a rough profile, just so I can check the profile of this image in this character to make sure that the footprint actually works, to make sure that the silhouette is actually nice. And so far I like what I've got. Everything looks in proportion when flipped, and I've got some contour lines I've worked into the actual skin here. I've started, it's a practice I do occasionally just to make sure my perspectives and everything are okay. I'll do some rough contour lines around the body, the shape of the different parts of the body, just to make sure I've got a nice attractive flow going in my gesture. I've got lines going in the right place, in the right direction, and the shapes are there. Like, so when I'm actually starting to establish form, and I'm starting to establish that bulk and that musculature and the fat and the tissue and all the things, I like to just for myself be able to identify where everything's at and if it's making sense. So these little contour lines you can draw over your character really help with that. They help with you just being able to see the shape of the body there. And I'll erase those or remove them in the final artwork, obviously, but it also helps me when I'm laying down the clothing and stuff as well. And if I need to move something at this point, like this back leg here, I'm not in love with how protruding it is. It just kind of protrudes out into space there, and it may not make the most sense. Whereas the character, if she's standing and getting ready to on guard in her on guard position, her back leg honestly will probably be more like this location here, when it comes to just balancing the character, to actually like having something to stand on, giving her place and a position and weight balance in three-dimensional space. So I'm actually going to go ahead and move this back there. All right, and to check the profile on that, what I will do is I'll actually go into my, I'm going to go into my silhouette here, and I'm just going to erase that part of the silhouette, and I'm going to go into my actual line art, and I'm going to lighten this portion up just a little bit so my lines are still there. I haven't corrupted or got rid of them, just in case I want to go back to that, my little main sketch there. And then I can check on the silhouette again, and I'm going to go in here and fill in that silhouette and see if it, to me that provides more balance to the image. It gives it more balance. I like that. I like that way better. Overall, it makes the form feel more grounded. It feels more realistic. So now that I've got kind of the new line laid out, get a little more aggressive with the erasing. I still have my underlying structure here from the original that I tweaked. So if I need to go back, I can go back. But I like this way better. Let's give it a flip. Yeah, see, there's a gracefulness to that. There's a more elegant gracefulness to that. It looks like she's maybe getting ready to get into a more aggressive stance for sword fighting or whatever. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, I like that. I like that better. So we could tweak that a little bit. There's some tweakage that might happen around in here. Get that hip dip in there right there. But overall, I think we have a pretty well established flow to the character, grounding. There's good perspective. There's good exaggerated posing. A little bit of exaggeration, not overdone. Actually, some really good perspective in that. So I like it. I'm digging where this is going, man. Very attractive outline. Kind of exaggerated styling. A little bit anime. It works both in flipped and in normal perspective, so she's being right-handed forward to us. The profile actually works, so I like that. I like where we're going with this. Alright, just to check some contour lines here on this back leg since we switched it around. Let's just make sure we're looking good there. This is actually this front leg I got a little off on my contours. Just going to lighten some of this up a little bit. Get rid of the visual distraction, and at this point is when I would start working in the face and really just kind of dialing in the anatomy of the face and what her hands are going to be doing, you know, actually kind of fully identify this and that. I might bring this sword, I might actually bring this sword into a more forward orientation, so to where it's kind of coming towards the viewer. That actually could work really well, I think. Kind of a little foreshortening there, so you get a little sword blade coming at you. That'd be cool. Yeah, I like that. That's an idea. We can work on that. All right, thank you for joining me again today. I appreciate you coming by. I appreciate you spending this time with me in this video. I hope you learned something. And just to reiterate the main points, if you're focusing on your gesture, your form, your proportion, perspective, and your exaggeration, you pretty much can nail everything you need to do in anatomy. Those are the foundations, the building blocks. So start there. Work your way up from there, and then you can start working into the more finite aspects of musculoskeletal structure and all those good thing, details, all this stuff. We'll get into that in a later video. But I appreciate y'all dropping by. Thank you for joining me again. Have a blessed day.